Hello there, viewers. It is your host again, the Cassette Master, here to present to you another vintage recording device. I hope you enjoy this presentation of the Califone 3430 AV cassette tape recorder from the year 1992, when I was only 1 year old. There may be viewers out there, and I'm sure that many of you out there will recognize this style of cassette recorder. Not simply the fact that it's the quote-unquote shoebox configuration, but the type of recorder this is, as being a machine used in schools. This is a very nice cassette tape recorder. Let us play back some recordings. Hello there. This is a recording being performed on the Califone 3430 AV cassette tape recorder from 1992, boasting the features of automatic level control, full auto stop, multiple headphone jacks, mic and remote jack, and, thank goodness, AC bias. Although to be more specific, this device is AC bias and DC erase, which is a common configuration found in many machines. Now, this machine is commonly found in schools and was aimed at the educational market. On the top it has an area for wrapping the power cord, but the power cord is permanently attached to the device. Also, this unit uses 6 C-cell batteries for portable use. I am now speaking up close to the built-in microphone of this mechanical pause equipped automatic level control device. Now, with the Sony F96 dynamic microphone, I can speak at about 8 inches away from the microphone, making a good sounding recording that doesn't have too much background noise. Now, this unit is actually made in China and is rather modern and more new compared to many of the vintage recorders in my collection. This machine, at a glance, oh dear, don't do that, camera. At a glance, you might think this machine is considerably older, but actually, being that it was an educational market machine, they didn't try to stylize it in the more modern-y looks that a lot of other consumer goods would have been styled, but was still styled in a more traditional style that would have been common to see even back into the 1970s, which I think is very excellent for a machine that is from 1992. Also, being in the educational market, many, not all, Clydeside can attest to that with his Califone machines, but many of the machines were higher quality and AC bias. This particular device has a flickering light to indicate recording and solid indicating light to indicate battery level or power indication during playback. Now, I'm using a third microphone. It's a Sony lapel type microphone, one that clips on the shirt. It's a condenser mic, and I'm going to see how the unit sounds using a condenser microphone that is not the built-in condenser microphone. To hear any differences in frequency response in the high frequencies or low frequencies, and any differences in sound quality between this microphone and the dynamic microphone used earlier. Unlike many machines out there, the service manual is freely available for download from the internet for this machine, where you can feast your eyes at seeing the schematic diagram and the way that this particular unit is designed. I acquired this machine on eBay, and by looking at the schematic, was able to already determine that it had flickering light record with solid light playback, AC bias, DC erase, and automatic level control, and that also you should be able to vary the monitor's volume output during recording without affecting the recording level, which is something that many machines don't have, because on many machines, when you're monitoring while making a recording, the output is at one constant level. Also, finding out from the service manual is the power output of the amplifier is 2 watts, although I do not know whether it's RMS or max. If you're going for wattage, go for the RMS. Well, part of the schematic I did not follow correctly, because no, you cannot monitor during recording. The audio, even through headphones, is completely cut off. Oh, I plugged it into the wrong jack. But the audio through the headphones is completely cut off during recording, which is a shame, considering it would have been a nice feature. So you cannot monitor while recording at all, unfortunately. But it will play back through headphones fine, of course. If you're going for wattage, go for the RMS. It is a good quality machine. Oh yeah, you also see it has computer view, mechanical pause, or max. So now let's do a music recording quality test. You would have also noticed it has a flimsy plastic handle, which is a little disappointing. It would have been nicer if they had put a nice solid metal handle. But then again, this machine is from the 1990s, and although in many ways is a good machine, things are also getting cheap, and the quality still doesn't have the same kind of build quality as one would have likely had in the 1970s. And also, for Clyde's sake, this unit, although I have not opened it, it's very obvious that this one will be using the quote silver dollar mechanism, as Clyde calls it, with the most extremely common Chinese, I think a Chinese design, Chinese cassette transport that is used on multiple recorders, starting at some point in the 1980s, going on all the way through the 1990s, through the 2000s, all the way up to even the contemporary time of 2017. The transport still finds use in modern recorders. It's an extremely common design, although not my favorite by any stretch of the imagination. Matter of fact, one of my favorite transport designs on any cassette recorders I've ever seen, honestly, were used on numerous General Electric tape recorders in the early 1980s. Many of them DC bias, but had a specific transport design that I've noticed on the many examples that I have always had a good belt, have always had fairly stable speed, have always been very robust, very reliable, and still used lots of metal in their mechanics. That is probably my most favorite transport design I've ever seen, and I wish that that would have been the one that would have taken on the widespread use as opposed to this other one. This transport design is easily recognizable by the fact that it has the hubs for the cassette. Most units only have 3 spokes, or other units only have 3 spokes on the hubs, but this one has, I think, 6 spokes on the cassette hubs, which is a common telltale sign of the type of transport mechanism commonly seen on more modern cassette machines, almost universally. The silver dollar design. Okay, now without further ado, I went on long enough let's have some music recorded on this machine, more by my Uncle Jack, from possibly roughly when this recorder was made, but I don't really know what year it was recorded in, to be honest. I'm an idiot. I'm now recording. I don't know how much of this wasn't recorded, because I grabbed my camera and started talking, narrating and everything, and then noticed that my camera wasn't even recording. I have the aux jack plugged in, and you can see here the LED is flickering according to the audio. Okay, soon we will be hearing playback of this recorded audio. Enjoy. And now let's hear playback of Power Within by Music by Accident, aka my Uncle Jack.
Searching everywhere for my answer of life, and we go upon our way. Reading stories by myself at night, too tired to fall asleep. When I heard a voice inside my head, giving me an answer to keep. He said, you got to feel the power within, burning under your skin. Try to find all your people and the human sand. Hold and wait for us till then. Now my life was supposed to destiny to do the things that must be done.
So you'll notice that the sound quality is fairly good, but if you listen carefully enough, there is a slight distortion in the lower frequencies, and I think that might just be the way of the amplifier, the design. It's not as noticeable on voice recordings, and still it's not too bad. Like, for the most part, the sound quality is still fairly good. Frequency response, if I remember correctly, is 80 Hertz to 10,000 Hertz on the manual, although I am not 100% sure that that is a recording frequency response or only the playback frequency response, because two models were shown on the service manual, and the two models were a playback only version and then the recording and playback version, and the same frequency response was given for both machines. So I have the suspicion that possibly the recording frequency response might not be as good as the playback frequency response. If it is, that would be a disappointing thing, because that would be in a sense that they're trying to hide information. Another thing I've noticed about the service manual is it does not explicitly state whether the machine is AC or DC bias. I had to find that out by looking at the schematic, where you could clearly see a bias oscillator circuit, which is easily findable by having basically a little oscillator with a single transistor connected to a transformer, which is then wired into the record head, and this is separate from the audio amplifier. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video of the Califone 3430 AV cassette tape recorder. When I was in kindergarten, back in 1997, I do not know for sure which model recorder was used. I remember at some point in school I was wearing a pair of white headphones,
and I was wearing them upside down, and I was listening to something on the cassette. I was listening to a cassette tape from some machine and had headphones upside down like this, and they were white headphones. That's all I really clearly remember about that time in kindergarten. But I have the suspicion that it might have been a similar model Califone machine. I would not be surprised. Either my memory has been slightly warped, or perhaps my vague memory may possibly point to a similarly styled Califone machine, which it sort of seems like it was, but I can't be certain. But it may have been a similarly styled Califone machine that I was using to listen to tapes on, and it may have also been Califone headphones, although I think that this part of the headphones was also white. But then again, that was a memory from kindergarten, and you know how childhood memories can be manipulated over time. Memory is a very malleable thing, and sometimes memories that are thought to be sound and strong can be found out to be wrong. Going on the subject of memories, for instance, the Sanyo Califone, the Sanyo Model M2 533 cassette tape recorder is a good example. I have a video of that machine, I think uploaded in 2010. But the Sanyo M2 533, I found one at a garage sale back in probably 2001, or maybe 2002, one of those 2 years, I believe. And this unit, it was found back in the days when I only took stuff apart. I didn't get it because, look, it's a vintage tape recorder. I got it because, look, it's an old electronic thing that I can take apart. So I took it apart. And the only way I found out the model number was the back end of the case was the only part of the case that was still surviving up in the attic years ago. Of course, the transport mechanism with many of its parts removed was around, and the circuit board as well, but and its speaker, but the machine was far gone. I distinctly had a memory of remembering the machine having round speaker holes. I found the Model M2 533 on eBay in 2010 and was greatly delighted because that was one of my most desired machines because I wanted to get that machine again. It didn't have round holes. It had long rectangular holes with slightly rounded edges. You see, over time that memory had been warped. The memory had been warped because of another Sears cassette recorder that had a certain style of round holes that I thought, oh, that's the same kind that the Sanyo had. No, it wasn't. So human memory can't be fully trusted. So as much as I might like to think that it was a machine like this I had in kindergarten, it might have been. It might have been an almost identical model, if not the same model machine. But then again, it could just be warped memory. The only thing I clearly remember is that it was cassettes we were listening to, and I wore the headphones upside down. And I thought that was the regular way that these particular headphones I used then were used. No, it wasn't. It's just that I had a small head. I was a little kid. The headphones were big and bulky, and everyone else, I believe, also was putting them on upside down. So I, in like fashion, thinking that was the way things were done, also put them on upside down. But they still worked, of course. But if it was the same model machine or the similar model, that would have been freaking awesome. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this ridiculously long video.